'Tis the season of Christmas. Lush trees lovingly decorated with sentimental ornaments of all kinds from years gone by, with presents nestled underneath. Stockings hung by the fireplaces, soon to be filled with tiny gifts. Old songs that everyone knows the words to. Mistletoe, eggnog, lights everywhere, on the tree, on and in the house, in the yard, on the mailbox, in stores, even on cars. Shopping, and afterwards even more shopping. Waiting all the way from the day after Thanksgiving to the day, December 25th. Now how can we forget that jolly big old elf himself, Santa Claus? What a season. As a kid it seems to take forever, and as an adult it seems to just fly by. But have you ever paused and thought about where these traditions came from and what they really mean? Really, what is this all about? Is it about Christ and the birth of a Savior? Is Jesus really the reason for the season? Is it about love, peace, joy, and harmony, goodwill toward men? Is it about material objects, toys, presents, or money? Or is it about something deeper? Greetings and welcome to the Christmas series, Christmas Unwrapped. In the first installment of this 7-part series, we're going to take a look at some of those traditions and answer some of those questions. So grab your favorite warm beverage, cozy up in your favorite spot, and take a journey through history to unwrap Christmas. Our journey begins in England with A Christmas Carol. England's favorite author, Charles Dickens, published A Christmas Carol in 1843 and captivated his readers with a ghostly tale of Ebenezer Scrooge, Tiny Tim, and the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. Shortly thereafter, the illustrations and romanticized ideas of A Christmas Carol would seemingly jump from the pages and into the homes of the common people, with a little help from the crown. In the December 23rd, 1848 edition of the London Illustrated News, they ran a 16-page Christmas supplement detailing all of the royal Christmas celebration. Amid the Dickens-like scenes of carolers and women slaving over Christmas pudding was a picture entitled Christmas Tree at Windsor Castle. The illustration depicted Queen Victoria, Prince Albert, their 5 children, and a governess gathered around a tree with sweets, ornaments, and presents. Young Queen Victoria, a social media influencer way ahead of her time, set the trend and it took hold of the English-speaking world. In fact, the illustration received a second life in December of 1850 in the American monthly magazine Godey's Lady's Book. Sarah Josepha Hale, the editor of the taste-shaping publication, as well as the reputed author of Mary Had a Little Lamb, pointed to the British Queen as a feminist role model of sorts. The caption under the photo simply reads, "The Christmas Tree." As the traditions of Christmas slowly progressed, it was England's favorite author at the time helping to cement Christmas as a holiday to be celebrated in America. Charles Dickens brought his work overseas on a tour of the States in 1867. Dickens packed theaters as he read his story to cheering audiences around the country. A Christmas Carol gripped the United States and led to Christmas being legalized in America and even declared a national holiday in 1870. But the Christmas tree and its roots didn't start with Queen Victoria. You see, Queen Victoria merely set the trend, she didn't start it. Queen Charlotte, Victoria's grandmother and the German-born wife of King George III, erected Christmas trees at Windsor Castle as early as 1800. Tracing back the German heritage of decorating Christmas trees goes all the way back through the Middle Ages, back even to ancient times. The tree, lights, and decorations draw us back even further, before Germany is an official country, into what's known as the Germanic peoples or the Germanic tribes. Here we find Norse mythology, the origins of which comes a lot of movies and TV shows a lot watched today. Thor, the god of thunder and title of a popular movie, his brother Loki, Odin, and a lot of Norse mythology easy to find in the Marvel Universe and TV shows like American Gods. Throughout the combination of superheroes and big budget movies and TV shows, it is easy to see these superheroes for who they truly are, ancient gods worshipped by these same Germanic peoples. One of those Norse gods is the god Yule, spelled J-U-L, where we get the term Yuletide from, which was later changed to Christmastide. The Yule log celebration lasted 12 days around the winter solstice. A massive tree would be cut down and burned for 12 days. Each day, a new sacrifice to Yule would take place. Sometimes, but not all the time, these sacrifices would include human sacrifices. As the Germanic peoples were grafted into Christianity, the Church of Rome placed the first day of the Mass of Christ on December 25th and the 12th day on January 6th, known as Epiphany. We'll get into Christ Mass a bit later. Despite no scriptural evidence to support January 6th as the day the wise men showed up to offer gifts to the newborn Jesus, this day has become known as Epiphany. During the Dark Ages, the celebration known as Yuletide included the European custom of placing an oil lamp or candles in the window to signify that the occupants were taking part in the Yuletide celebration. This is where we get the tradition of lights from. One of the most predominant Norse gods is Thor's father, Odin or Woden, where we get the word Wednesday from, or Woden's Day. Google it. Odin is the main contributor to the piecemeal story of how we came to know that big ol' elf, Santa Claus. Odin, a tall fellow with a long flowing beard, sometimes seen holding a staff. He would travel the night sky riding a white horse during the winter solstice, deciding who would die and who would prosper. Later on, in England, Odin would morph into Father Christmas, who, crowned with sprays of holly, would travel the countryside getting roaring drunk as part of the Festival of Fools celebration. Frequently, he would be accompanied by a horned goat. Another contributor of the story of Santa Claus comes from the traditions of the Church of Rome and a Turkish bishop named St. Nicholas from Myra in the 4th century. This bishop was actually present for the formation of what's called the Nicene Creed, but we'll get into the Nicene Creed a bit later. St. Nicholas was said to have actually captured the devil, put him in chains, and made him his personal servant. Recognized in various cultures as Krampus, Beelzebub, and Zwart Piet, or Black Peter, this assistant to St. Nicholas was best known by his German name, Nacht Ruprecht. Described as a hideous horned creature, the dark, sinister servant stood in stark contrast to the purely St. Nicholas. As St. Nicholas traveled around inquiring about the behavior of children, Ruprecht would drop candy and gifts down the chimney into the shoes of good little boys and girls which they had placed there. If a child could recite a verse or demonstrate a skill for St. Nick, the child would receive a gift. If unable to remember a verse, or if the child had been bad, he or she would receive a switch or a whip. Ruprecht also carried around a large sack with which he would use to haul away the really bad boys and girls. As more Christians combined the winter solstice with Christ Mass, St. Nick started to diminish and Ruprecht continued on. In this scenario, the devil, or the bad guy, that is the Punisher side by side with the Christ child, is actually given the title Weihnachtsmann, or Santa Claus. From here, let's pause from going further. In episode 3, we'll learn more about Santa. This episode will be all about the history of Santa and how it came to be what we know of today. For now, let's stay focused on the history of Christmas as a whole. Santa Claus is somewhat the ringleader of the modern-day version of Christmas. He might be what you call the MC or Master of Ceremonies to the celebration or party known as Christmas. This party or celebration wasn't always well received, though. As a matter of fact, the celebration of Christmas was outlawed in the USA for 236 years. As I said before, Christmas wasn't legalized in America until Alabama in 1836, with other states soon to follow suit. Somewhat because of Charles Dickens' triumphant tour through America in 1867, and also because of the media campaign to celebrate it coming from across the pond over in England, and all of the immigrants coming to America from all over the world throughout the 1800s. England also made it illegal to celebrate Christmas from 1642 to 1660 due to its pagan origins. In 1651, Oliver Cromwell, known as the Lord Protector, enforced an Act of Parliament banning Christmas celebrations. Christmas was regarded as a wasteful festival of fools, and people were forbidden to celebrate any part of it until Cromwell's death in 1658. After Cromwell's death, Charles II was enthusiastically welcomed back to England to take the throne as the country's rightful heir, and legislation banning Christmas was dropped, and the common people were free to celebrate as they pleased. Father Christmas and the Festival of Fools, along with many of the traditions known today, such as gift-giving, decking the halls, caroling or singing in the streets, and more, are directly derived from the ancient Roman festival known as Saturnalia. Dating as far back as the 5th century BC, Saturnalia was an ancient Roman festival in honor of the god Saturn, held around the winter solstice between December 21st and 23rd. The holiday was celebrated with a sacrifice at the temple of Saturn in the Roman Forum, and a public banquet followed by private gift-giving, continual partying, and a carnival atmosphere that overturned Roman social norms. Gambling was permitted, and masters provided table service to their slaves as it was seen as a time of liberty for both slaves and freemen alike. Any and all crimes were allowed. Homosexuality, cross-dressing, and uncontrolled debauchery reigned supreme. Basically, it was much like the TV show and movies The Purge. A common custom was the election of a king of Saturnalia, who would give orders to people, which were to be followed, and would preside over the merrymaking, much like an MC or a master of ceremonies, or kind of like a DJ. During Saturnalia celebrations, holly and other greens were hung over doorways as part of the pagan ritual to ward off evil. To deck the halls with bales of holly was to acknowledge the powers of the nature gods. According to Wiccan rituals, placing holly or other greens in the shape of a circle or wreath boosted its magical powers. Similarly, mistletoe, when used with the casting of Wiccan or Druidic spells, could render a woman helpless to sexual advances. This is where we get the custom of hanging mistletoe in doorways, and if a woman is caught underneath, she may be kissed and must not resist. The winter solstice festival is much, much older than the Romans. Many cultures, including the Greeks, the Persians, the Egyptians, among others, have celebrated in one form or another the worship of the sun near the winter solstice. As a matter of fact, around the same time Rome was celebrating during the winter solstice, so were the Celts and what's called the Germanic peoples. You may remember them from earlier. How these cultures came together is none other than the Roman Church in the beginning of the 4th century. Around 312 AD, the Battle of Milvian Bridge stirred up something in the Roman Emperor Constantine. Constantine had a vision with the promise of victory if the Chi Rho symbol, the first 2 Greek letters of Christos, were printed on his army's shields. It worked, and Constantine played an influential role in the proclamation of the Edict of Milan a year later in 313. This edict declared religious tolerance for Christianity in the Roman Empire. Before his death in 337, Constantine would call the First Council of Nicaea in 325, where we find the infamous St. Nick. With the Edict of Thessalonica in 380 AD, the Emperor Theodosius I made Nicene Christianity the empire's state religion. By 395, the Roman Empire would split into the Eastern and Western empires. By 476, the Western Empire would collapse and give rise to many new kingdoms, including Great Britain, the Franks, the Lombards, the Visigoths, and more. As the Roman Empire was undergoing changes, another authority gained more power, that of the papacy. For a period of time, the papacy was influenced by certain regions. Each period of the papacy was known by which region it was influenced by, such as the Ostrogothic papacy, Byzantine papacy, and Frankish papacy. Over time, the papacy consolidated its territorial claims to a portion of the peninsula known as the Papal States. While the political climate was changing, Pope Gregory would instigate the largest full-scale mission from Rome known as the Gregorian missions. The idea was to convert the then pagan English and everyone in between, the Celts, the Franks, the Lombards, the Visigoths, and others, to Christianity. The way to do this was to use the traditions already established in each culture and reform them to be Christian. As more regions converted, the papacy gained more power. It is easy to see the power that the papacy wielded, as Pope Leo III is the one to crown the then King Charlemagne as an emperor on December 25, 800 AD, a title not held for over 300 years. As we move through history, we see the rise of the Holy Roman Empire and the Holy Crusades. During this period, even more people are converted and absorbed into the Roman Church. Eventually, we get to the fall of the Roman Empire in 1806. While the Roman Empire is crumbling, a new power is starting to emerge, that of Great Britain. Enter King George I with his Germanic heritage as we come full circle in our tour through history. Through the descendants of King George, the traditions of the pagan god Yule would live on to this day. But we skipped over something important. Christmas, where we get the term Christmas from. First used around 1038 AD, Christmas, or the Mass of Christ, was the new term for the old pagan 12 days of Yule worship. But what does the term mean? What is a Mass? A Mass, as pertaining to the Catholic religion, is the celebration of the death of Jesus on the cross. It is ritualistic with chanting, eating bread, and drinking wine, said to not only be representations of Jesus' body, but the actual real thing. It's said that the priest presiding over the ritual has the power to actually make the bread and wine Jesus' actual blood and flesh. Taking this into account, adding the term Christ to the word Mass is to mean a celebration of the death of Christ. Christos, or Christ, or Anointed One, is the Spirit of God that descended upon Jesus after he was baptized by John the Baptist. It is the Spirit of God. It is how Jesus is the Son of Man and the Son of God. To say Merry Christmas is akin to saying Merry Death of Christ. To put it yet another way, since Christmas has always been a time of disorder, drunkenness, lewdness, mischief, and a time generally where people did whatever they want, it is much like not having your parents around and throwing a huge house party that gets out of control. Saying Merry Christmas is much like saying God's not here or my parents are out of town, so let's party. Much like the traditions of Saturnalia where things were reversed, or with Father Christmas and the Festival of Fools, to take Christ and the authority of God out of our lives and to do whatever we want never ends well. So, before the next time you say Merry Christmas, just think about it. In this episode, we have taken a journey through history to discover where each Christmas tradition came from. We have journeyed all the way back to ancient Rome and the Germanic peoples and back again. This isn't to say ancient Rome is where it all started. As I have said, sun worship is much, much older than the Roman Empire. I encourage you to look these things up for yourself to gain an even better understanding of the rituals and traditions we've covered in this episode. It may surprise you as to what you'll discover. I hope you've enjoyed our little journey through history, and I hope you'll join me for the next episode. In it, we'll take a look at what the Bible has to say about Christmas. Thanks for watching, and may God bless you.